Hi, TJ Fix-It here, and I'm guessing there may be a few people out there who are dealing with the same situation I am with their landscape lighting, where they have a broken clamp that is the clamp that attaches to the threaded rod that connects to the stake. And when the clamp is no longer attached to the stake, you cannot adjust the light to whatever angle you want it to be at, and instead end up having to use spare bricks or stones or whatever you may have available to try to prop that into the position you want it. Of course, that never lasts. The light is going to fall over again, and in general, it's embarrassing and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I did not care to spend the money to replace all of my landscape lighting. We have a fair amount of it. Several of them are broken like this. And what I discovered is that if you don't want to buy the really high-end stuff, you can buy some newer LED lighting, which I like the idea of LED lighting, but what I discovered is that even those things are rated for 50,000 years. They make it sound like they're never going to break. Of course we know that electronics break. And if they do break, you have to replace the whole light unit. You cannot just replace the bulb itself. And I don't like that. That just doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, I came up with this solution that I'm actually kind of excited about because it works so well and it's so incredibly inexpensive. And given that it's so inexpensive, it will allow me to actually make these repairs to the clamp unit and then be able to put LED lights inside of my existing housing, inside of my existing lamps. So here is the solution, folks. It cost all of 30 cents. It's an 18-cent bolt and two 6-cent nuts. And I wasn't a math major or anything, but I'm fairly sure that equals 30 cents. That bolt is a 1/4-inch bolt by 2 inches long, and obviously then two 1/4-inch nuts to go with it. But that's all it takes. So to make the repair, all you have to do, let's take the spike off. We don't need that right now. We'll just unscrew that, put that off to the side. Now it's important to know that this threaded rod is actually two pieces. So let's disconnect the broken portion of the clamp. That's what this is that I'm unscrewing right now. So I prefer to hang on to that, and I'll show you why later. But you can discard it if you want, but I prefer to hang on to it and use that piece. It is somewhat useful. So what I was getting at is the threaded rod is actually two pieces. It's two pieces of threaded rod with one threaded inside of the other. You may want to consider the outer one a nut, but two pieces. The reason that's important to know is for adjustment later on when you're putting it back together or when you have it in the ground and you want to adjust it a little bit. So to put this back together, you probably want to put the inner threaded rod so that it's right at the edge of the outer threaded rod. Now to make the actual repair itself, disconnect the clamp. You can leave the housing attached. You don't have to touch any of that stuff, but disconnect the clamp by undoing the decorative nut here. Put that aside, and then we'll pull this apart. And what you want to do is take the head of the bolt, and we'll put that aside as well, the lens cover. You want to put the head of the bolt inside of the clamp and the nut on the outside of the clamp. And then when you put the clamp piece back together, you want to make sure that the bolt head remains on the inside and that the little curved portion of the clamp surrounds the bolt. I'll loosen this up so you can see a little bit better. So that's what we're trying to get right there. Now the other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you push the wires in as close to the bolt as possible. And the reason is you don't want the wires to get caught in the teeth you don't want the teeth of the clamp to be clamping down on those wires. You want the wires to remain free in there. So we're going to just work them around a little bit to make sure they're in that recessed area of the clamp, like that. That looks pretty good. And then we'll put the decorative decorative nut back on. And we'll just finger tighten it for now. We don't need it extraordinarily tight. Okay, so that's what it looks like. You can see the wires are still free to move. They are not clamped in the teeth. That's important to know. So what we're doing here is we're actually creating tension on the head of the bolt itself. The head of the bolt is being pinched by these two outer cylinders. That's what's creating the tension that holds that bolt in place. And believe me, it's snug, and I just barely have this tightened up. And that raises a good point. All of this, you just want to snug up by hand. You just want to tighten it by hand. I would not recommend using tools. We're not trying to attach a steel I-beam to a building. We're not trying to create a huge construction site here. We just need to snug this stuff up so that it creates friction, which allows the clamp to work when you want to adjust the lamp to whatever direction you want. So now we'll just snug this first nut up tight. You can see the wires are still loose. They're not constricted in any way. We'll take the other nut off the bottom of the bolt. And what I'd recommend is putting a little loop of wire in here before you attach the threaded rod. And the reason for that is when you do later adjust the lamp one direction or the other, you want some excess wire in there so that the wire is not constricting and holding the lamp from moving. Having a little extra wire will allow the head of the lamp to move freely. So now the wires go through the old broken piece, and they go through the threaded rod, and we just connect all that back together, and I'll screw this broken piece back on. And the reason I want to keep that broken piece, now you can discard it if you'd like, but the reason I like to keep that that broken piece on is because it creates a little bit of room for the wires. And I'll show you in just a second. There we go. So we have our little finger loop of wire, and as you can see, when you push this back together, it creates a little bit of space there for the wire to sit inside. Now, you may want to check to make sure there's not a sharp edge on here. Mine did not have a sharp edge, but you could easily file it down. Or even if you don't have a file, you could use sandpaper just to knock the rough edge or the burrs off of there, but mine was quite smooth. So anyway, this is what you end up with. You have the new bolt inside of the clamp. You have the new nut snugged up against the clamp. You push the old broken piece up. You push up the threaded rod. And now you take the other new nut and put that on the bottom. And you want to make sure that you're not binding the wires here. So again, this just needs to be snugged up. It does not need to be tightened anything other than hand tightened. So now, this is what you end up with so far. Nice and clean. Everything's still adjustable. You have a little bit of give here. You'll notice I have some tape on this wire. And when I took this out of the ground, I noticed that the wire was nicked. But that tape has nothing to do with this particular repair. I just wanted to put a little bit of protection on there to make sure that it didn't get any worse. But anyway, you will see that the new nut and bolt and the wire are more narrow than the threads that go into the stake. So all of that will just very nicely slip inside. We'll bring the wire out. Screw this back together. Get a little dirt falling off there because I did just pull this out of the ground. How unprofessional. Anyway, there you have it. Look at that. Sweet. And again, it is fully adjustable. You can move this to wherever you need it to be. And just make sure those wires do not get clamped in the teeth. Clamp that back down. Look at that. It's going to stay wherever you put it. Man, I love stuff like this. Anyway, good luck. I hope you find this helpful, and you're able to easily go around and for very, very little money and repair all of your landscape lighting that has broken clamps. So until next time, TJ Fix It signing off. Take care.